You're listening to Blue Collar Takes with your hosts Pat and Ben.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Pat, what's up, man?
What's going on, Ben?
Living the dream, brother. What about you?
Just enjoying the days off.
Back to work tomorrow. That's going to be a rough stretch, but pays the bills.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, let's get it going. What do you want to talk about? Are we talking about the Veep stakes for the Dems, or what?
Yeah, I guess so.
Governor Tim Walz, man, what do you think? I mean, I have to say, you kind of called this. This
I've
is
been
probably
saying
like
this for a while.
5 or 6 episodes, maybe 7 episodes ago.
Yeah.
That this is your pick. I was picking Buttigieg the whole way because I thought for sure that ticked off every one of the DEI requirements that they'd be looking for.
Mm-hmm. It's funny to say that because I said that to my wife today. I was like, he's a DEI pick. And she's like, what does that mean? And I was like, had to explain it all to her. And she's like, well, how could that be? I was like, every one of the projected contenders, if you will, was a white male.
Yes.
That was it.
Yeah, I mean, I was solidly in the camp that they couldn't get away from the LGBTQ community without having Buttigieg. And they might pay for it. But Governor Walz, if you're going to make a pick to represent the LGBT community, he's a damn good pick for them to. I mean, he has been the most far left governor I think we've ever had in Minnesota.
Yeah, he's the most far left governor there is right now.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I mean, Minnesota, I mean, it's kind of becoming the new California. It's like the California of the North.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sad, but it's true.
hmm Lots to talk about with Governor Walz. I mean, it's not like he's had this shiny, unblemished record. He's had plenty to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you want to start?
I don't know, man. There's so much I don't
I
know.
think
I mean, the
I,
obvious thing is the BLM riots.
that's what I was going to say. We have to start with law enforcement, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot with them. We should do a whole episode on that George Floyd thing with covering the riots and the actual Derek Chauvin, what he did and what wasn't allowed in court, and the training that they said he didn't have that was exactly what he did. The book, the manuals that they had that they said they weren't the manuals until everybody found out they were. I mean, there was a lot of things that court was kind of like a kangaroo court. He got strung up and brought through there. That said, still an asshole for not just listening to the crowd and moving your knee. I mean, you prosecuted yourself on that one. Do I believe that he is the reason that George Floyd is dead? No, I do not. I'm going to say it right now. But Governor Walz and Ellison really, really, really strung those guys out to dry.
Yeah.
I mean, they abandoned law enforcement as fast as I've ever seen. And again, it was just because of the shifting political winds, right? It was a Trump era thing to hate the police because Trump was pro police, and this was immediately they jumped off the bandwagon and kind of left Minneapolis to fend for themselves.
Yeah, I was trying to find the post I sent you about that. Um
Yeah, night one, night two, night three, night four.
yeah, well there was one that I sent you too about the Republican that was in charge of the House at the time
hmm
here, and he was the one on night 3 that had called. So everybody's heard the President Trump take on how he initiated the National Guard.
Yep,
Well, he can't unless he federalizes them, right?
correct.
So everyone's saying it's false, like he didn't do it, blah blah blah. What happened was you read some of the stuff that's out there. The Republican in charge of the House for Minnesota called President Trump on night 3 and
hmm
said, "We need you to intervene. He is not doing it. We need someone to intervene." And then President Trump called Walz.
Correct. And then Walls put 90 troops on the street the
Correct.
next day.
Right.
But it was just 90. The full
hmm
force of the National Guard didn't show up until night four after the precinct was burnt down. So you have to kind of take it with what Trump's saying. When Trump's telling you, and I mean, for those of the Trump supporters that understand this, it's kind of like when he said he's going to make Mexico pay for the wall. If you're the people that I always talk about in my inner circle that are leftists, the first thing they say was Mexico didn't pay for that wall. They didn't pay one dime for that wall. But if you have common sense, you're like, well, he restructured the trade deals and got enough money back to pay for that wall. That's how a businessman works. They paid for
Right.
that wall.
Right.
And it's the very same thing here is Trump is saying, yeah, I got the National Guard troops on the ground for you. Yeah, because he called Walls and like basically put the screws to Walls and he would have federalized the Guard
Yeah,
troops.
and that was part of that article was how everyone in the defense, kind of the higher ups that would have communications with the president, was against it. But he had talked to them about doing it and using the Insurrection Act
Correct.
to mobilize the National Guard because Walls
Yes.
wasn't doing it.
Walls wasn't doing his job. And also that's why Trump continually says things like, they let Minnesota burn down. Minneapolis and St. Paul were burned down with millions of dollars worth of damage. I don't even know how much money it was in damage that was allowed to happen. But again, I mean, this is a stain on Governor Walz because night one happened after the George Floyd riot. Night one wasn't bad. If you remember, it was night 2 and 3 that were bad, then 4 was terrible. And then uh four at night 4, the end of night 4 is when the troops are on the ground and they stayed on the ground throughout the remainder of that week and into the next. Now we work with a lot of cats that were there for it and we're out there in the streets. And I
Yeah.
myself did some work with some former buddies, former employees of ours that we did stuff on the sly for private detail stuff. Um yeah, it was night 3, night 2, 3 were bad. Night 4 was bad, but not as bad as night 3. And night 4, I think, if I remember right, night 4 is when the precinct burnt down, and then it was either 3 or 4 when the precinct burnt down, and then it was after that the guard hit the ground
Yeah, I
and
believe it was
pushed back.
4 because I think it was 4 was the night that there was only 90 and they didn't go out onto the street.
No, they stayed in muster locations, I thought.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they were ever called to anything.
No, I think they were, if I remember right, they were in Arden Hills,
Yeah, the armories.
Stillwater. Yeah, Arden
Yeah,
Hills, Stillwater, and
Bloomington.
Bloomington. Yeah, that's correct.
I don't know if the 90 were there. I do know that Bloomington had um a ton of guard there. They have a bigger armory and they
Hmm.
were like sleeping in the parking lot
Yep.
there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I go ahead.
Night 1 wasn't bad. I think it was night 2 where Jacob Fry finally reached out to Governor Walz and said, "Hey, we need help." They called on the phone, has text messages and has call logs to back up that he talked to Governor Walz.
Hmm.
Now, Jacob Fry asked for support from the governor for National Guard because obviously Walz has to activate the guard.
Right.
Walz doesn't have a real great shining record when it comes to leadership with the National Guard. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Hmm.
Um, there's a great video from you sent me that asking me what it was earlier about his record. We'll talk about it in a minute, but there's a great video from the guy who was the next in command that had to assume command because he ditched out.
Mm.
So we'll talk about that. But Jacob Fry calls Governor Walz and says, "Hey, um, we need help. We can't do this alone. Our police officers are getting overrun. We don't have enough assets. We need some force protection, and we need somebody to start some area denial, right? Pushing
Hmm.
people out and not letting them back in. It's really hard to do with just the Minneapolis PD. Um,
Yeah.
can't do it, right? I mean, you have guys on shifts that are coming in on overtime, and you're not bringing the entire police department in, which they ended up doing, I think, for nights 3 and 4. Uh, but
Yeah,
Governor Walz
I
did
think so.
nothing. Governor Walz night 2 did nothing. Night 3 he did nothing, and Jacob Fry asked on night 2 after the fact, said, "Hey, is this official enough, or do you need me to put this in writing?" Governor Walz's team has completely denied that that call ever took place. Jacob Fry later showed the text messages and the call logs to say, yeah, it took place. So
Hmm.
Governor Walz gets a Pinocchio on that one. Um, but again, Governor Walz, what he's doing, he doesn't want to immediately be heavy-handed because this is a political shift, and he sees it. It's an anti-Trump political shift. It's cops are bad, and it's a far left, kind of like a socialist policy. All these groups are on the ground. They were predicting by the weekend, that next weekend, 75,000 protesters. Can you imagine that? 75,000 protesters. And once they heard that number, they had to step in and break it up. But Governor Walz still did nothing. Night 3 happens. Jacob Fry then submits uh, in writing. I think he called back and asked, "What the hell?" And they're like, "You never called us," because he was basically diming out Walz, saying, "Hey, I've asked the governor for support," and Governor Walz was like, "That's a lie. That never happened." Pointing fingers back and forth, right? And
Hmm.
then he submitted in writing to make it an official request, and then Governor Walz's hands were tied, and that's when the Republican in Congress got a hold of Trump, and then Trump called down and said, "Here, do this, or I'm going to do this." And then Governor Walz was like, "Well, shit, I have to do something because if Trump takes control of the National Guard, comes in here as the law and order president, breaks this up and restores order,
Yeah.
I'm going to look terrible."
Hmm.
Um, but by that time, by night 4, when the full force of I think it was even night 5 when the full force of the guard hit, uh, it was too late. I mean, the hundreds of millions of dollars of damage. I mean, I don't have. Do you have a total of how much damage was done in
I
those
don't.
riots?
I was just trying to look for it.
I can't. I want to say it was a billion, but I'm probably way off on that.
Oh, I think it was more than a billion.
Yeah, it was.
They had built they burnt down a police precinct, they
Yep.
burnt down a bank, they burnt down a post office,
Well, they
they
burnt down a whole block. I remember
yeah,
that.
they burnt down a whole block. They burnt down a bunch of new construction, um, that was lower income
Yep.
housing.
Hmm.
They burnt down all sorts of stores in the uptown area.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, I mean it was crazy. I remember it got so bad. I took the second night, maybe the third night off of work
Yeah, you're
because
afraid it could reach your house.
yeah, well, I live at the time I lived in a first ring suburb, and the police and the fire department in that city had put all their guys on, and they were doing a grid pattern of the entire city. Every 15 minutes there was a fire truck or a squad that went down every road.
Yep.
And the fire trucks never stopped for like 2 days
Oh
because they
yeah.
had gotten word that they were
Well,
going to try to take out the fire department.
yep. It was days 2, 3, and 4 that the fire trucks were out there, and they couldn't stop. Now,
They never stopped rolling.
no, they didn't. And I'll tell you when we rolled through, because I actually took, I got, I linked up with one of our former colleagues, and we did some stuff on the private down there.
Hmm.
And at that point in time, some of the briefs that were getting put out were potential IEDs, potential sniper attacks on law enforcement. And there was, I mean, they had credible sources. There was bricks everywhere, like loads and loads of bricks were being
Yeah,
dropped off. Somebody was paying
like
for
pallets
bricks.
of bricks.
Somebody's paying for bricks. And so when we were going through um, and doing what we were doing, PSD for some people that were a little bit higher up in civilian world, um, it was quite interesting to see how things were unfolding. And I was like, holy shit, this shit is happening in Minnesota, my home state, in Minnesota on our soil, and we're getting these briefs given down to us that are just like what you'd expect in Iraq, like the hostile forces are here and watch out for this street because of this group of people that are camped here and doing this. And it's like, holy balls, this is happening. This is happening right now in our home state. And it was really messed up.
It was
Uh,
crazy.
but I will tell you, the morning of day 4, when we rolled through there, it looked like a combat zone. It looked like
Hmm.
airstrikes had just taken place. There were still buildings on fire. There was still smoke. Everything stunk of burnt plastic, and uh, that you knew there was a fire.
Hmm.
And the fire departments weren't putting like what we would typically see. They weren't. The whole area wasn't surrounded with fire trucks and putting stuff out. They were still putting out spot fires all over the place and moving still. It was like, I don't know, it was a scene out of, some apocalyptic movie that you'd see where you're expecting zombies to come running out and cars to smash into each other and explode, and just it was insane. Like 6:30 in the morning hits, there's no rioters on the street. 7:30 in the morning, no rioters on the street, and then by 10 o'clock that morning, they're back at that square that's now George Floyd Square where the Cup Foods was, and they started all over again. They started there and they started amassing and
So
doing that crap again.
the biggest difference was during the day was the peaceful protesting for the most part, right? It was
Hmm.
the people that they'd shut down that bridge, the 35W bridge.
Yep.
They were on the bridge. Like
They went
all
on
the
the
stuff during the day,
interstate.
all the stuff during the day for the most part was fine. And then it was as it got into the like 7, 8 o'clock, everything just those people left and the agitators were there and it was just on everything was on
Well,
fire.
and then the other thing too that I can remember being briefed on was the agitators were professional agitators that were brought in from all over the place. It's not like they were just from Minneapolis, Minneapolis residents protesting because they knew George Floyd. There are people from Portland, there are people from Washington State, there are people from California, there was people from the East Coast, and like the majority of the arrests, I think if you were to go look at the majority of the arrests from those 3 or 4 days, you'd be surprised at how many out of staters there were that showed up to
So
to
the funny part about that is Walz always said that. But it wasn't Minnesotans, it was people outside of but the actual arrest records show it was like 80% Minnesotans.
really.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder, is that what
Well, they were what
do you think
during
that's
the
legit, or do you think that's
yeah,
not legit?
I do because for the most part, the people that were doing the most damage, they weren't getting arrested. It was the people blocking the highways. So
Oh, okay.
as far as like if it was protesters or if it was rioters, most of the rioters it was so much they just had to disperse them, right?
Yeah,
So
that makes a lot. So
they just used tear gas to
you
get them out
couldn't
of there.
make the arrest, yeah, because it was so dangerous too. You
You weren't
couldn't do it.
making a lot of arrests
Yeah, that
unless
makes
you were
sense.
attacking a cop.
That makes sense. Which that was insane too, because I mean, uh, I can remember night four watching officers take, those fireworks that the box and it's got like mortar shells in it and it
Yeah.
fires off like 8 to 12 shots.
Hmm.
They had those boxes and they're setting them on the ground and lighting them off towards officers. And I can
Yeah.
remember officers getting hit in the face,
Hmm.
skipping under their shields and things like that. I can remember National Guard guys going, shit, I think I'm gonna have to engage.
Hmm.
And there was one National Guard kid. I remember this. He did engage, complete fuck up, but he did engage. He actually fired one shot. I don't remember if he hit a person or it was a warning shot, but he shot at
I don't
somebody's
remember
car.
any of that
Oh yeah, 100%. One kid
because
did engage.
the first
Um,
night they were there, they didn't have ammo. Like
no,
all
this
the
kid,
pictures they
you
didn't
can
even
find a
have
video.
magazines in their rifles.
You can find a video of it. I've seen the video, and I talked to the individual who was the sergeant in charge of the kid. So this
Mm.
absolutely happened.
Got
He,
it.
uh, he. I think they were, if I remember right, they were linked up with either St. Paul or Minneapolis Police Department, and a car was coming. And so, if you're a military cat, you probably understand this, but rules of engagement are ROE is a big thing. We take warning shots on vehicles, right? If a vehicle's coming at you, maybe your SOP was to say warning shot, warning shot, warning shot, and then fire off a warning shot to stop the vehicle. First shot goes in the grill of the vehicle, second shot maybe in the grill of the vehicle, third shot driver's done, right? That's kind of how it depended on who you were and what kind of leeway your military command would give. But if I remember right, the kid ended up hearing something from Minneapolis the police department or one of the whoever the PD was there with, and then he ended up engaging, thinking that he could shoot, and immediately his NCO, his non-commissioned officer in charge, was like, "What in the fuck are you doing?" He's like, "Who
Hmm.
fired that?" And then it was just a debacle afterwards.
I bet.
Um, that video is out there. I'll try to find it. Uh,
So I
but
have
yeah,
the damage numbers.
what was it? Is it a billion?
No,
Okay,
it says it's approximately $500 million, but it was 1,500 businesses.
1,500 businesses.
That's what it says. 1,500 in the end, according to the state legislative report, more than 1,500 businesses and buildings were burned, including a Minneapolis police station with an estimation of 500 million in property damage statewide. So you remember all the Targets, all the Walmarts, everything was being completely looted.
Yep. Okay, so I got the video of the guardsman shooting.
Okay.
Uh, I'll see if I can fast forward it to where they actually engage. Let's see if you can hear this. That's after he shot. I don't know if you can hear that. There,
I'll hear it.
Floyd's killing.
I got nothing.
you can't hear that?
No.
Yeah, he fired 3 times. Boom, 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 4 times.
Shots fired! Shots fired! I'm gonna shoot. me shoot. Said shoot. Who's told you to shoot? When got shot. That was less lethal, dude. I said shoot.
The guardsman who shot at the car said he feared for his life and was following orders from
So, did you hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that I mean, it's not a big deal that happened. That's just a military thing. Somebody said hit it, and they meant with less lethal, and he took 4 shots at this car.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean that. Unfortunately for the military in that situation, you're a broadsword, you're not a scalpel. And in a riot like that, they want you to be a scalpel, and that's just not how it works. But going back to Governor Walz with the military, he didn't put the National Guard on the road early enough. I mean, what would have been good to have the National Guard is in that broadsword capacity where
Yeah,
they
so
can use denial.
Yeah, I have that too. So it was the first day. Day one was Tuesday, May 26th. George Floyd died at 9:25 p.m. on Monday. And so tensions were starting to rise. They'd started protesting in that area. Then
They
on
were at that
Tuesday,
Cup Foods that night, right?
yep.
But that was a peaceful protest.
That-
That wasn't a riot. That was mostly people pissed off.
So they attacked squad cars, smashed windows, and tore down fences, but
Never mind.
it was mostly peaceful, right? Like that.
I'll be over here effing myself. Next.
Then the next night, Wednesday, May 27th, the protests continued through the day. It said that according to the Star Tribune, on Wednesday, May 27th, the second evening of unrest around the 3rd Precinct, Fry said Police Chief Arredondo called him at 6:23 p.m. to say that the Target store near the police station was being looted and that he needed the National Guard. Fry said he immediately telephoned Walz at 6:29 p.m., relayed the information, and asked him to send the National Guard. We expressed the seriousness of the situation. The urgency was clear. He did not say yes, Fry said of Walz. He said he would consider it.
Yep.
Fry insisted that he explicitly asked whether his verbal requests constitute a formal request, and the governor's staff confirmed that it did. The governor's office now disputes that.
Right. I remember while that Target was being looted, there was 2 squad cars that sat right out in front and just watched because there's nothing they could do. I mean, you're so helpless. They just sat there, and a lot of those fires were the same way, where the officers just sat a block away and watched because you can't do anything. There's not enough of you to fight.
Yeah,
you might have 150 police officers. You can't fight 1,000 protesters.
That night, Arredondo asked for 600 National Guard.
Yep. And got nothing.
Yep. And then Fry said he received no confirmation the National Guard was coming the rest of Wednesday night or the following morning.
And that's where a lot of the block burnt on night 3. The precinct burnt night 4, and that was just a continuation of the block burning.
Yeah. So on day 3, Thursday, May 28th, this was after the first round of fires. It said a thick curtain of smoke lingered over Lake Street as dawn broke Thursday morning. And the Star Tribune reported, after last night's violence, things have been accelerated by the State Director of Public Safety, Adjunct General of the Minnesota National Guard, John Jensen, wrote to the Pentagon at 8:30 a.m. that day. Walz wanted to set up a meeting with the Secretary of Defense that morning. In the meantime, Jensen said he had just mobilized 50 members of a quick reaction force to support Minneapolis police.
Which is nothing. I mean, that's a drop in a bucket.
Not when you have that many people protesting.
But what surprised me, the Star Tribune said violence, because remember, everybody on the mainstream media was like, "Oh, it's a mostly peaceful protest," and shit was burning down behind him, right?
But that was a quote from the adjunct guy. So, like, if that was recorded or whatever, because a lot of that stuff was all just online, like,
right,
phone stuff,
right.
It says on the morning of May 28th, U.S. General Joseph L. Lingo warned 2 of the Pentagon's highest-ranking officials that the situation in Minneapolis was about to get a lot worse. Minneapolis police were expecting as many as 75,000 protesters to converge on the city that weekend in response to George Floyd's murder 3 days prior. He wrote in an email to Deputy Secretary of Defense David Norquist and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Mark Milley. The Minnesota National Guard had 200 military police officers standing by to assist. They are prepared to be armed should MPD and the governor request it. So then Fry's office followed up at 10:55 a.m. on Thursday with a written request from the National Guard noting widespread looting and arson and that the protesters and first responders had been injured.
You know, it's
That's-
amazing. I mean, yeah, okay, keep going, finish.
It just said the ongoing situation is well beyond the capability of the police and fire departments to respond. And then it said that and then this is, I think, when Walz had his comment about how or maybe it was after he had that comment about how the mayor didn't understand what he's asking for. Like, what was the guard going to do? They're mostly 19-year-old cooks and
Yeah, that
such.
pissed off a lot of Minnesota Guard, and it should.
Mm-hmm.
Even a 19-year-old cook has gone through the basic level of training to know what the hell to do to be given an order and follow an order. And it's a hell of a lot better than nothing. So, that's frustrating. I mean, I get that they're not riot control trained, but those guys can be put at a checkpoint and be plussed up with 2 or 3 police officers, and it's just a force multiplier. And he wouldn't do it. And the reason why he wouldn't do it is because when the National Guard gets brought in, the situation ends. And I think it was it was politically damaging to Trump, right? Because this was Trump's big thing was law and order in his first campaign. And this made law and order look bad. I mean, they were already calling Derek Chauvin a murderer before any facts had come out. And that was from Governor Walz.
Yeah.
Right? They had said this murder, this murder, this murder. And I mean, if Derek Chauvin is tried in there was no way for that trial to ever be fair, right? Because the media coverage completely slanted it. They made it look like he completely choked out, stood on the neck of George Floyd, and they didn't take anything. I mean, it was just the typical media butcher job of the stuff that you could see on the news, right? They took a snippet of what happened to George Floyd, which was George Floyd being yanked out of a squad car, which looked bad, George Floyd being put on the ground, and then Derek Chauvin sitting on his neck, which was an approved technique at the time by the Minneapolis Police Department. Arredondo lied. Other people lied. It was proven to be a lie. We know that. And we really shouldn't get into this stuff, but I'm going to say it. George Floyd had lungs that had massive amounts of fluid in his lungs because he A, had COVID, and B, he ingested fentanyl. He was saying he couldn't breathe while he was in the squad car. That's how it started. That's why they yanked him out of the squad car, because he was freaking out because he couldn't breathe. And then they put him on the ground.
Well, and they had called an ambulance too at that time.
And the ambulance went to Cub Foods instead of Cup Foods.
Yeah.
And so the ambulance wasn't there. They did exactly what they were supposed to do, and they followed the technique that they were trained to use, which was testified to, but then they wouldn't let them use the manuals. The manuals weren't allowed to be in. I mean, they railroaded Chauvin on a political witch hunt, and I'm surprised that Chauvin hasn't gotten out yet, to be honest.
Well, his appeals have been declined.
Of course.
Yeah.
But it's at some point it's going to make it all. Did the Supreme like the
I think so.
Supreme Court?
I
mean,
so.
And I think again that's just because people don't want to touch it. It's career suicide to go against what the masses are going for. A couple years down the road, 3-4 years down the road, I'll say right now, put this on the calendar. 3, 4, 5 years from now, that guy's going to get out on appeal. Somebody's going to take up the appeal. Somebody's going to look at it and look at the totality of evidence. There's no way he should have been convicted for that. No way at all. But what he got convicted of was the smug, cocky, arrogant look on his face when everybody's like, get off his neck. And he wouldn't do it. He was
not only that, but it was the time where he went unconscious and they didn't
still didn't
the failure to respond. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that was just
that should have been the charge.
Yep. And this again was just Chauvin was kind of like, this piece of shit, I don't care, I'm doing what I want, right?
Yeah.
And that's just honestly, if you've ever worked with Minneapolis or St. Paul PD, that's kind of the hardness that they have about him because they deal with so much of that crap on a nightly basis. That was just his his give a fucks were not there. But that's why you're in prison, bro. That's what happens when you're in prison. The political winds shifted. You got caught in the middle of it and you acted like an asshole. So that you got convicted for being an asshole on camera. That's what the totality of evidence should have went the other direction, but you got convicted on being an asshole.
All right, so I want to finish this real fast, and then we can move on to something else. So that night, then he called the National Guard for deployment at like at 2:30 p.m. on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
But 8 hours later, only 90 had showed up. Now, remember, the Defense Department said there was 200 military police available, and they only brought out 90. So then when John Harrington,
Called Trump.
no, John Harrington was the public safety commissioner for Walz, and
Oh, okay.
he said that the request was really vague, or rather vague, and not enough detail to activate the soldiers. The National Guard was on scene that afternoon. Asked about the delay, the National Guard Bureau spokesperson, Rob Perino, said Walz was in charge of the deployment timeline. The governor's office directs the National Guard to respond when and where. That's how any state will tell you it goes. But at the same time, that night, his daughter, Hope Walz, was tweeting out that there is not going to be National Guard out there tonight. She literally asked someone, this is her tweet. The Guard cannot be sent in within minutes. It takes time for them to deploy because they come from all over the state. To be clear, the National Guard will not be present tonight. Could someone who actually has followers relay this message to the masses that have gotten the National Guard trending that the Guard will not be present tonight? There is a lot of misinformation that is further spreading fear and chaos at the scene of the protests. So you're literally telling the protesters you got one more night.
Yeah, and you know what? Like part of part of what helps the campaign of like getting people out there is in this case, it's not enemy, it's protesters, but the enemy fearing that you're coming, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's leaked ahead of time to get the enemy to just kind of push back and go away. Kind of like the troop buildup in Iraq in 2008 into 2009, right? 2007 into 2008. Or was it 2006 into 2008? I think it's 2006, 7, 8. But that was leaked well ahead of time. They let everybody in Iraq know. They let Muqtada al-Sadr know everybody's coming, and they're going to get this mass amount of troops. That's kind of what was being done ahead, trying to hope that the protesters weren't going to go back out and be as crazy as they were. And here she comes along, and she's like, "No, no, everybody, don't worry about it. They're not coming out."
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
So then that night, no joy is this is a quote. No joy. Milley wrote in an email, as the police precinct fell, the general said he had just met with President Donald Trump and Secretary of Defense Mark Esper. Need you to call me ASAP, he told Lengel, who was the guy in charge of the Guard.
Yep.
So this is implying that
Yep.
Trump was going to activate them.
Absolutely.
And then the next day is when Trump said in a tweet that the military was ready to take over. Any difficulty, and we will assume control, he said. When the looting starts, the shooting starts.
Yep. That's a strong statement.
Mm-hmm.
And then Walz didn't want to look bad, so he had no choice.
Then that's when he activated them all.
If you get your National Guard forces federalized because people are asking for help and you won't, you really that's putting you in a box. You have to do it.
Yep.
Yeah. That's an insane thing, and we've all seen. For those of us from the area, we've all seen the videos. We've all seen I mean, we watched this live. You know what I mean? Where others may not have. They might have gotten it secondhand, and it's personal for a lot of people in the state of Minnesota because some of those places that burnt down, they were there. Unreal, you know?
Yeah, it's just it's so like I remember everything about it. like it was yesterday. And
It was kind of a
it's
9/11 moment. You know what I mean?
it
It's
felt
etched
like
in your
it for a
memory.
long time because like
Yeah,
where I had lived, you could see the fires, like the smoke.
right.
You could see all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it was I remember my wife being terrified. And like I finally, well, I think one of the nights I think I sent her to my brother's place
Yep.
because we were working nights.
Yeah. So that was, yeah. I mean, what do you do? You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it was a mess. That response was a mess. I mean, it was a weak-handed response. It was weak leadership at the time, and you could tell he was caught between a rock and a hard place because of the political winds. Maybe he wanted to help, but he just felt like he could. He wasn't willing to
Yeah.
until enough of a statement by the protesters had been made, and the willingness for the city and for the state to just sacrifice a police precinct. You know what I mean? Like the message that gave off was just unbelievable. The rest of the state kind of sat by and just in awe. And I think that's why it was kind of that, like I'm saying, that obviously this has no comparison to 9/11 in terms of tragedy and what took place. But it gave off this shock when we watched those officers fleeing out of the garage, out of the gate, you know,
Hmm.
the restricted area of the police department and from that precinct and fleeing down the road. I mean, it was like it it was Minnesota's Mogadishu Mile, and
Yeah.
that was crazy.
What I think the crazy part, and it's not really out there. At least I haven't seen it out there, but like we know some people from Minneapolis police,
Mhm.
and they literally the mayor and the police chief literally told those guys to lock themselves in the basement of that precinct.
Yeah, they almost got burned to death.
They almost got burned to death.
Mhm.
And those officers said, fuck that. And they grabbed as much of the equipment as they could, loaded up
Yeah,
the squads. And that's where you see that video of them
the
ramming
four with the
just,
four squads that took
yeah,
off with all the
just
armory, yep, as much as they
knocking
could.
over the fence. Like they didn't even unlock it. They just went.
Yep. Well, they had no choice at that
Yeah,
point. The front of the
for
front of the
sure.
precinct was on fire. They were also told under no circumstances were they supposed to engage. So,
Right.
um, they have people trying to throw Molotov cocktails
Hmm.
inside of their precinct. Now, if that were to happen out here, uh, in this rural area, if somebody's trying to throw a Molotov cocktail inside my house, you'd be well within your rights to engage. But at that time, when you have your your chief of police, Aaron Dondo basically told everybody, I won't side with you."
Hmm.
I mean, he handcuffed them hard.
Yep.
And like you said, we work with some of those guys who we have inside scoop inside baseball with what happened there, and that was disgusting.
Yep.
Uh, but again, political wins. I mean, he was dealing with Jacob Fry breathing down his neck, who wanted to save his ass, and Walz. And let's be honest, they are both insanely corrupt.
Yep.
Which brings me to my next point. Let's move on. We
Yep.
covered it in an episode, right? We did a whole episode on this
Yeah, buddy.
in one of our
Short ones.
yep, in one of our happy hours. So the COVID relief funds that were misappropriated, right?
Yeah.
This is tied to Governor Walz. It's tied to Keith Ellison, and it's tied to Jacob Fry. Why? Because they're all corrupt as shit.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about that.
Yeah. So it, like you said, we talked about it. The Feeding Our Future
Mm-hmm.
nonprofit scam $250 million, a
Yep.
quarter of a billion, right?
Yeah.
250 million from COVID funds for it was supposed to go to feeding kids, right? So making
Yep.
sure that kids who are normally supposed to be in school at that time when they locked everything down,
Right.
that they were getting food. Like
Mhm.
everyone was getting taken care of.
And the
And
way this was working was they had to have a restaurant that was able to feed the kids or a
Yep.
venue that was able to feed the kids.
Yep, like a commercial kitchen.
And they didn't have that. And they were making kids' names up. And like you brought up before, it was on a random name generator,
Yeah, a
just
website.
making lists of kids' names to say they had them. And they were way over the amount of kids that lived in their districts that they were supporting. Now, Walz's public education department, they caught it
Yeah, they knew
and
it.
and they did nothing.
Yeah.
So Walz let it happen. Walz knew it was going on, and they backed down. They didn't pursue it. Why? Again, political winds of the time. You weren't going to make waves with people that were not white, not Republican or conservative, and not, if they didn't check off a certain box.
A large portion of them, and there it's all out there, so we can say it, was the Somali community.
Correct.
And they it wasn't everyone. There was this Feeding Our Future had to sponsor these other nonprofits that were supposed to be doing the work. And they signed off on, or this lady, Amy Bach, signed off on all these groups that they were doing it.
Yeah, let's talk about her kickbacks.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
she hasn't pled. She pled not guilty. She hasn't gone to trial yet, but a bunch more of them just pleaded guilty now.
And this is the same group.
70 of them that have been arrested.
Yeah, and this is the same group that all of a sudden a bag of cash while they're under indictment, while they're being charged, while they're tried, they're going through a trial. A bag load of cash shows up on a juror's doorstep to try to bribe them to not to render not guilty verdicts to these people.
Yeah, it's $120,000 in cash and a note that said there'd be more if they found them not guilty.
And I mean, that's that's amazing. That's Hollywood type stuff there. That's a movie.
Yeah. But
you know what I mean?
This didn't come from Ellison's office, obviously. He knew the people involved. They came from the U.S. attorney for the District of Minnesota.
But isn't it funny that Google gave Ellison credit for it when we looked up Ellison and his background?
Yeah, and the city attorney, or not the city attorney, Mayor Fry, who went to them. So the U.S. Department of Education shut it down for a time because they knew that they were sending out way too much money.
Correct.
That this was the most they'd ever seen come out for invoices. They shut it down, and then Mayor Fry went to him and vouched for him and said, "Hey, you got to turn this back on." And they
threatened a lawsuit. And
they did end up suing him, which Walz will claim when this comes up. Just watch. He's going to claim that a Ramsey County judge told them they could not shut it down, and that the judge actually came out and rebuked him hard. That is not what I said. You guys didn't have any policies set up to deal with this.
Right.
That's what I said. How they didn't want to give any information was the problem. And so they were trying to say, hey, we're shutting this down, but we're not telling you why.
And that'll be a fact check where people will say that the Walz is a part of this. They'll fact check it false. But I have information right now that Google's doing some shit, and I'm going to show you that I think is disgusting. And I've been tracking this as a little experiment just to kind of see. But we'll talk about that when we're done with this Feeding Our Future stuff. Feeding Our Future, a bunch of them have been found guilty.
Yep.
So far.
I think of the 7, so a bunch have pleaded guilty. Of the first 7 on trial, 6 of them were found guilty and 1 was not. And I haven't really gotten into why that 1 wasn't, but I think he was kind of on the outskirts of it. So he's not necessarily.
I thought the number was at 19 between those who pled guilty and those who have been convicted.
19 of the 70.
Right, with way more to come. Plus that the ringleader, who was that lady you were talking about,
the Amy Bach.
So that's an interesting one. Next thing about Governor Walz that I love to hear. It was funny because you had asked me earlier what the text message that you sent me said about Governor Walz basically shirking his leadership role before a deployment. And my wife was just playing the video of the guy who was forced into that role after Governor Walz said, no, I don't want it. So basically, Governor Walz was a first sergeant, and he was being made a command sergeant major, which means he would have been in charge of an entire battalion. They were getting ready to deploy, and Governor Walz was like, oh, shit, I'm going to be a command sergeant major in charge of 1,000 dudes while we deploy.
To Iraq.
To Iraq. That's a lot of responsibility, and that's not going to go well for me. And so he stepped down, basically accepted a master sergeant role, which means master sergeants are not in charge of soldiers. Your first sergeants, sergeant majors, and command sergeant majors are all leadership positions in charge of troops. So he stepped aside to a master sergeant role, which is you're not in a command role at that point. So he stepped aside to this role. The guy below him was forced into the role and forever thinks that Walz is a giant piece of shit for shirking his duty. And Walz's excuse was, well, I'm going to run for office. But Walz had no aspirations to run for office while this is all taking place. Those aspirations all popped up while he was being told that they were going to deploy. So he hung on to that position, accepted the paycheck all the way up to a couple months before the deployment, and then stepped aside and said, I'm going to assume a master sergeant role. You can take these guys downrange and go to war with them.
It was
I'm
like
not doing that.
I thought it was like a year. I thought it was as soon as they found out they're getting deployed, he retired.
He basically he stayed for, according to what this guy says, up till a couple months before, because it's
Okay.
not like an instant you get out of the military right away.
Right.
You go through a bunch of process.
But he left that position though, right?
Yes, he stepped aside as soon as the deployment came up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and accepted the paycheck all the way until he got out, and was more than happy to be a master sergeant, not in charge of troops. So that guy, there's a video, we got to find that, because he just, before Walz ran for governor, he came out with it, and the newspaper confirmed it, that yes, the story is true, that this in fact did take place, but refused to run it. Weird, right? I mean, somebody running as a liberal, and the newspaper not reporting on that. So that happened, and that speaks to, I mean, volumes to leadership. If you're getting ready to deploy, you've been in charge of these guys for a long time, and you're getting ready to deploy, and they want to give you command over those guys, then you say, nah, I'm good. I'm not going to war. I'm not going to deploy to war. You're going to get looked down on if you choose not to go.
Yeah.
Your guys are going to look at you and be like, well, you know how I know you're a piece of shit? That's just how it goes.
That's earned. That's earned.
Yep. But you are going to hear the best of Walz. Oh, he was a football coach. Oh, he's this middle class man. Oh, he was in the military. He's a military veteran. Oh, he's the normal guy. And I absolutely love it, because here he is. Yep, you're a military guy, but when you were getting called to serve your country and go overseas in combat, you didn't want any part of it. Why? I don't know why. Your aspirations, your political aspirations, maybe that's true, or maybe you're a coward. I don't know. Either way, I tend to believe you're a coward because you're afraid to make tough decisions when the political winds are shifting. I think you're a fucking coward. That's what I think about Governor Walz. But hey, I might be wrong. Along with that, I find it kind of comical that this cover-up thing is still going. I'm going to send you a couple things, and I didn't share these with you, and I did this on purpose. I'm going to show you. This is an article I found.
Okay.
This is off Google. Remember, there was a lot of people talking about Governor Walz having all sorts of money, right? And Google is saying that that's you fact check, or you do a Google check to see what Governor Walz's net worth is. So I just sent this first article to you. This article says in 2017, Governor Walz's net worth was $13,500.
In what year?
2017.
Was 13,000?
$13,500 was his net worth in 2017. So, I mean, that's the first article that you can get that I found that was like, okay, dealing with Governor Walz. But you know how you do a Google search, and right at the very top of that Google search, you get different results, right? That show you different things. Like it might be, it's not in an article, but there's articles underneath it that can show you how they came to this search. So I'm going to show you this. Google is censoring these searches for Walz, and I can prove it to you. So this I did today. I Googled Governor Walz's net worth. Okay, so I just sent you this one. It says most sources, including barchart.com, have Walz's net worth of around $600,000. While this isn't a small chunk of change, it's a lot less than a lot of his peers in politics. Former President Trump, who Walz and Harris will be running against, is a billionaire, for example. Okay. Governor Walz and Trump aren't even in the same category. Trump made his own money outside of politics.
And he lost money when he was a politician.
Right. Okay. So that was what was today. Now, 4 days ago, when you and I started talking, and I said, yeah, it probably is going to be Walz, just based off of the people they had in place. I took a screen cap again of this exact same thing from Google. I questioned it, and I'm going to show you what that came back with then. All right. I'm sending it to you right now. I want you to read this one.
Okay.
I just read the 600,000 one. You tell me what this one says.
According to CA Club India, Tim Walz has an estimated net worth of 19 million as of 2024. His annual income is around 2.5 million, derived from profits of various businesses, dividends, and interest on bank deposits. Though as his role as governor, he earns approximately 127,000 per year. Damn.
Okay, so now what really pisses me off about this is because you know how we bring them up and we leave them on our phone, these articles that we find.
Yeah.
I didn't screen cap the article before this. So 7 days ago, I did this again, and it almost said this exact same thing, but his net worth was 32 million, and he was like 3.5 million for what he was making annually. So it's gone down. Now they have him when you Google search. This is the top thing that comes up, 600,000. It'll be very interesting to see. We'll wait a couple days and we'll do this again. But this is what Google is doing. They're manipulating the results to show you that he is just middle class Tim. He's a veteran. He was a football coach. He's down to earth. $13,500 was his net worth in 2017, right? That's what they're doing. So I thought this, I didn't think we would catch it. And the only way I caught it was I Googled 7 days ago and it came up and I had it up as a page and I forgot that I left it up. So when we talked about, yes. So when we talked about a couple days ago, let's do Governor Walz because we were pretty sure that he was going to be picked with all the black SUVs and crap that were in his driveway.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Like, no, that's his normal detail.
Right.
It's like 8 black SUVs rolled out to a fundraiser.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's his normal detail.
Wrong.
His normal detail of Secret Service that he now gets.
The governor before him, his motorcade was 3 vehicles. And the only reason I know that for sure is because that motorcade was involved in an accident. One of the cars hit somebody, and so it had pictures of it, and they were all sedans. I'm like, everybody I talked to is like, they're like, no, it says the press secretary came out and said, or the spokesperson
the press secretary,
said, because they're not going to lie about it because it hasn't been announced.
Right. But the only reason I caught this was because you told me that night that you think it's Walz because of the black SUVs.
Yeah.
So I looked it up again because I forgot that I had it loaded on my phone. And this second one, the one I just sent you, was what I had from then. And then I forgot again that I had it left up as a page on my phone. And I did it again today. And that's the 600,000 one. So we got to pay attention to that and see what it says going forward. Because, I mean, you're finding an article, oh, he's only worth 13,500 as of 2017. Oh, he's worth, 32 million and some change. Oh, no, he's 19 million. Oh, nope, only 600,000. That's a modest income. And this is the games we're playing where Google is manipulating the results and they're deciding what Governor Walz, what information. This is information control at its finest. They were going to taint these search results. As soon as Walz was announced the candidate, these search results were changed.
Yeah.
Middle class Tim. That's the play they're going to go for. He's an average everyday guy. And it pissed me off because I started telling you right away, he started going on the attack. Remember, you're like, oh, I think it might be Shapiro. I don't know if it's going to be Walz. And I was like, Walz is freaking on the attack right now, saying that Republicans are weird. He's saying that people, they want to be in your doctor's office. They want to be whatever. And how amazing. The guy who is all for drag queen story hour and grooming children and all this shit, he's calling conservatives weird who want to stop that kind of crap. Mm-hmm. You're going to call conservatives weird. I'm all for free speech. I'm all for everybody's equal approach. Kids, stay out of it. Leave the kids out of it. Drag queen story hour, go fuck yourselves. We don't need any of that BS. I don't care about the rest, right? But for this guy to come out and be like, oh, they're weird. Okay, Walz. That's weird to you that people on the conservative side are against abortion. Okay, I get it. Not everybody agrees that abortion should be illegal or legal. I get it. I understand. Everybody's got their reasons and their motives for it. But that's weird to you and not the drag queen story hour, not the gay pride parades where people are naked in the streets with their fucking cocks hanging out, standing next to a fucking 7-year-old kid. That's not weird. That's acceptable to you, Walz. If that's what you're going to say, Walz, you better be prepared to be absolutely torched. And then I saw that meme that I sent you today with Walz. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, this makes sense. This is what's coming down. Tampon Tim, right? Because he's
Tampon
all
Tim.
about putting tampons in
Well,
boys' bathroom.
he signed a law that put that required all the schools to have tampons machines in
Both
all the bathrooms in school. So both boy and girl bathrooms had to
correct.
have tampon machines.
So he's Tampon Tim. That meme is hilarious.
Yeah.
But that's not weird.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? This guy is not the guy that Google is going to paint him out to be. And it's all of our jobs. Anyone listening, it's your job. It's everyone's job to be pushing back and saying Minnesota is not better than it was 20 years ago. There is no way we are even close to being what we were 20 years ago as a state. I don't live there anymore. I moved, but I was born and raised there, and uh, I'll never go back. It's getting crazier and crazier and crazier.
Yeah, it's
And
getting pretty bad.
even your guys' gun laws. Did you see the gun law? How it was just
Oh, yeah.
interpreted?
Yeah.
What in the actual? Not only are you a retreat state, you can't even draw on somebody before you retreat. You have to retreat with your hands up, run away before you can be tackled by the assailant, before you can draw. And I mean, Minnesota's absolutely fucking lost their mind right now. So yeah, I don't know. But yeah, Governor Walz, conservatives are weird, but not tampons him. He is definitely straight-laced high school football coach, military leader of the year, or the century, probably. We should go with the century. Great guy. Awesome response to the George Floyd riots because they were mostly peaceful, except for that, what'd you say, 250 million or 500 million?
500 million.
500 million in damages.
1,500 properties.
1,500 properties that were destroyed or vandalized. Yeah, that's a good record, Tim.
Yep. That was the other thing I saw that I don't remember as him running for governor, but apparently he was arrested for a DUI in Nebraska because he's from there. He's going 95 and a 55 or something. And then
But don't worry.
So they
He
tried to
wasn't drunk.
say, he tried to say that it was a misunderstanding because he's hard of hearing. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I looked at Brenda, I go, what?
No, he was deaf, not just hard of hearing. They said
sorry,
deaf.
Yeah, he was
But
deaf.
But hey, I had a surgery that fixed it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so now like they're getting the reports from Nebraska and like,
Right.
oh, well, except for he failed the roadside Olympics, he
Yeah.
failed the PBT,
Yep.
and he
the
failed the
test.
blood draw.
Yeah.
So
But-
otherwise, it was just a giant misunderstanding because he was deaf.
right. Otherwise, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, everyone who listens to Walz speak in Minnesota, he's a good speaker. I'll give it to him. He's a good speaker. He's calm. He's confident. He's kind of like Obama with he's not as smooth and debonair as Obama.
Yeah, he's not as charismatic.
Nope, but he is a good speaker and
Mhm.
he's believable when he talks.
Mm-hmm.
But with a politician, that's the problem. Because when you're a piece of shit who shirks your leadership command because you don't want to get deployed, when you are afraid to make a decision because you're a coward and you're worried about the political winds shifting on you if you make the right decision to go in and break up these riots, if you're gonna say that, oh yeah, this, instead of accepting responsibility on any of those things, right? You lie, and deny. That's what politicians do. And that's Walz. And I'm sure, to be fair, there are going to be plenty of people who come out and say, well, Trump lied about this and Trump this and Trump that. Sure, you could say it both ways. But when Trump was president, my gas prices were still sub $2. I didn't have to add another $150 to my grocery bill every time I went to the market.
Mhm.
I felt like I was more free under Trump than I do right now under Biden, with just the pressure that you have to face with everything that's going on politically. Lord knows if you say the wrong thing, who's coming for you, how that's going to work out, if you're getting canceled, if you're getting pushed around. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And we're kind of, Walz said it, talk about a socialist comment, throw that one out there.
He just said that, and I should have had that pulled up. He said that it's not socialism, it's called being neighborly or something like that.
Socialism is neighborly.
Yeah.
And
or some people, socialism is other people being neighborly or something. I can't remember how he phrased it. I'll look it up.
Yeah, it came across as basically socialism. Being socialist is being neighborly. And I that's unbelievable. But I mean, it's unbelievable for an American, a governor of a state in the United States to say that. But that's how far we've come. That's how far left. That's how progressive he is to equate socialism and being neighborly is that should never be in the same category ever.
All right, I got it for you.
Okay.
One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness.
Yeah. I could see how that would be.
That's a video. Like he said that in an interview on TV.
Yeah, I could see how that would be very neighborly to be socialist. Um, I wonder how that's going in Venezuela. Do they feel pretty neighborly right now? Do they feel like, they're going to share an apple pie, or are they fighting for every bit of freedom that they're going for? That's that's the most asinine statement ever.
Oh,
But I
hey,
mean,
that was on the White Dudes for Kamala Harris phone call. That's when he said it.
does that not make sense? That makes perfect sense. I've never seen so many people who are white hate themselves for being white. You know
Dude,
what I mean?
who just saw that? Who just said that? Oh, was it? Man, I'm gonna screw it up. The actor, comedian. He's donating 150K to. He's Jewish. Donate 150K to the Harris Walls because he wishes he
Seinfeld?
was black.
Oh, I didn't see that. He wishes he was black. Yeah, you
Yeah,
gotta.
he said all Jews wish they were black, is what he said.
Oh, that's pretty. I mean, I'm glad you covered all. That's pretty vague. That's pretty vast there.
Okay, stand by.
It blows my mind that so many people can be cowed into feeling guilty for their race. If you're a liberal, you know how I know you're a soy boy panty waist, that you feel guilty about being white. I don't feel guilty at all about being who I am. Nor do I think black people should feel guilty about who they are. Hispanic people, Asian people, I don't think anybody should feel guilty about being who they are. You can be neighborly, yes, without being socialist. You can get back to taking care of your neighbor and pointing the moral compass north again instead of south. But this whole like white guilt thing, it's funny because I don't think there's very many conservatives who feel guilty at all about being white. But you know why the Democrats do? Because they're the party of slavery. that's the difference. That's the difference. 1852 or 54, the Republican Party was started. By 1864, the slaves were freed, and it was a Republican president who had freed the slaves. Previous to that, Democrats seem to like to go onto auction blocks and buy people like cattle. You should feel guilty about being white because your party was the party of slavery. So I have nothing to feel guilty for. Independents, you don't have anything to feel guilty for. Democrats, go fuck yourselves. You can feel guilty. Makes perfect sense to me now.
Yeah, so it was Ben Stiller said, I wish I was black. Every white Jewish guy wishes he was black. Get out there and vote and donate and take advantage.
He's a fucking moron.
That was on a Comics for Harris call.
They put him, he's not even a comic.
Don't tell him that. He's also not black.
He's also not funny.
Yeah. But he did do blackface in a movie.
I'm sure he did. Yeah. The only thing, like, what funny movie has he been in that's actually funny?
I'm not a fan of him, so none of I mean, I like Dodgeball, but it wasn't because of him.
No, no, nothing to do with him. It was Vaughn that was funny in Dodgeball.
Yeah, well, it's that whole group of people in that on Vaughn's team or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess Tropic Thunder was kind of, there was some laughs in it. Again, nothing with Ben Stiller because he goes full idiot in everything he does.
Yeah.
I think he was funnier in that museum movie than he was in any of his other movies because they weren't trying to have him be funny.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not a comic. Yeah, get on stage with like Bill Burr, Ben Stiller, and go toe to toe to see who's funnier, and you're going to get destroyed because whatever.
Yeah. Anyway.
I don't know. I mean, it blows my mind that this is all coming out with Walz right now. I mean, we've never had this crazy or this far left of a ticket for both president and vice president. I mean, he is, like you said, he's the most far left governor, and I mean, him and Newsom have to be neck and neck.
Well, there's some stuff that's still to come out. Just in this last legislative session, how it ended, there was a break in protocol. And Walz had said that he was texting until like 1 a.m. or something. And then somebody requested that information, that FOIA for that,
Mhm.
what those texts were. And they said, oh, he never texted. And he's like literally said it in an interview or in a press conference, I think. And they're like, oh no, he just misspoke. Like they were just talking. Like, so there's gonna be stuff that comes out about that. And there's gonna be, I mean, just this last session, like they had the pedophile, they wanted to remove the pedophile language
That's the most disgusting. We
in the
talked about that.
Minnesota Human Rights Act.
So you
does
couldn't
not,
discriminate against
yeah, so
pedophiles.
currently pedophiles are not included in the act.
They're not protected.
They're not a protected class, and they had tried to somebody, a representative or a senator.
Oh, and that somebody
Yeah,
obviously was
yeah,
transgender.
yeah.
I'm
I
not
just
saying
don't remember if they were a senator or representative. They're obviously in Congress for Minnesota, and they had put in an amendment to remove that language, uh, basically implying that it was a protected class without actually stating it was a protected class. And so,
well, the way the language was written before, it would have protected them under the way this
right,
the person had drafted the legislation, and it was going to go through. The Republicans came out and basically made a clarifying
yeah,
addendum to it, saying, you know, we are not going to recognize. And they did a vote on the floor,
hmm
and the vote went through unanimously, or not unanimous, but it
yeah. It was
passed.
no, it said unanimous.
Did it say
It,
unanimous? I thought
yeah,
it said with
the
bipartisan
amendment that
support.
the amendment they passed did go unanimous, and it was basically that pedophilia was not considered a protected class. I mean,
Right.
it was pretty basic line that it was just, this is not going to be a protected class.
Well, and the scary thing is if the conservative national media didn't catch a hold of this and blow it up,
yeah, it was a
it
bunch of family like nonprofit groups that were
it,
like,
it would have went through. And
because they attached
that's
it to the budget.
and that's scary. And that's the problem. Like they hide things, right? So
Mhm.
now we don't know if the intention of this bill was to sneak this through and have this be a part of it. It was somebody from the trans community who was putting it in the bill. And the only reason I bring up trans community is because of the drag queen story hour with all these kids. Um, they're getting, they were getting catching some heat at around the same time this was going through, and so it just was weird. It felt off, and that's why it got picked up at the national level. And I think there was so much pressure as a politician, like we've said over and over and repeatedly, kids are off fucking limits.
Mhm.
Thankfully, still in Minnesota, they were like, whoa, this is not politically good.
Mhm.
We should probably all say that, yeah, we don't agree with this. But I honestly don't think we're that far off if they're starting this bullshit.
Mhm.
I don't think we're that far off from them
Yeah,
trying
that
to through.
removing that language, they weren't changing any other laws. So like the other laws that were still would have still applied.
Mm-hmm.
They were just removing that, clarifying that this was whatever. It was setting it up for future, right? Like now we got that
Absolutely.
removed. Now let's take it to the next step.
This was step one.
Yep, for
Right?
sure. For sure.
And instead of the next step being at the end of next year, the next step could be 3 or 4 years down the road. Now they need a lot more progressive people to jump in place and take positions from them to push this
Mhm.
through. It's scary that this almost went through
Yeah.
because you could see the path where it's leading, and kids are off limits, man. We have those laws on the books for a reason, and that's the most wealth you or I will ever have is with the love of our kids. So, and every father, every
Mhm.
mother who has
Mhm.
children knows that. And it has to stay that way. They're off limits. So that was good on Minnesota for actually coming out and doing that. But again, it's really scary that it could have went through. And I guarantee you, if it did go through, Walz wouldn't have. He would have signed it.
Well, he kind of there was something in there that
He was pushing
had
to sign
supported.
it.
Yeah, he had
Yes.
supported both bills or whatever,
Yes,
both
he would have.
amendments.
He would have signed it.
Hmm.
He would have signed it if the political pressure wasn't there. He would have signed it. But again, that's Walz, right?
Yeah.
Political pressure, political wins.
Well,
he
same
caves.
with Kamala.
Absolutely. Kamala's a box of rocks. We've already talked about that.
Wait, is it Kamala or Kamala? It's Kamala.
We can just call her Rock Potato. I don't know. We'll
I think it's Kamala.
Kamala, whatever.
The thing that cracks me up, people say it's racist if you mispronounce it or say it the other way. There's literally a video of her, and we'll try to find it, of her saying both versions of the name.
Yeah.
Like when she
Well,
talks about herself in the third person. Like it's hilarious. Like, oh, I'm racist, but she can't figure out her own name.
well, it's yeah. But if you look at all her videos, I mean, like Trump was saying, she's Indian until this point. Now she's black. She's
Yeah.
doesn't smoke weed except for when she's in college listening to Biggie, even though Biggie was
Yeah,
like 12
Biggie
at the
was
time.
not. Yeah,
College.
Biggie wasn't a singer then or a rapper then.
This lady's so full of shit. Like you couldn't have picked. I mean, you didn't have any real great choices as Democrats because you've gone so far left. There's nobody that can save you with a pick. The only thing you can do now is try to squeak by in this election and steal it. And honestly, most of America at this point aren't going to believe that you've won this election fairly if even if Kamala does win.
No, I mean, even Obama's guy, David Axelrod, came out and was like, Kamala's losing this race. Like this pump up by the media and this like bump up she's getting right now is going to go away. And it's starting to.
Yeah.
And
It
they're starting to
should.
turn on her because of picking Governor Walz, which I think is hilarious.
It
There's a
needs to.
lot of people pissed that she picked
Well,
him.
because he's not a DEI requirement. He's an
not
old white
well,
man.
Not even that. They literally just called him like an average blue collar or blue
Yep, that's what
party
they're trying to do.
person. Like
That's what they're trying to do. He is a blue collar. That's what they're trying to paint him as. He's
they didn't
anything
say
but.
blue collar. They meant like blue as in Democrat. It's just a regular blue Democrat, like just middle of like he's nobody. He's nobody. Nobody knows him except for around here. Like,
Right.
he's a nobody.
Yeah. And I don't, like I said, I think we were both talking about it. I just don't get the appeal outside of the fact that he
Well,
is far more intelligent than Kamala.
The
Kamala.
Hamas the Hamas wing of the Democratic Party won. Like they got Shapiro out. The unions didn't like Kelly, and those were the three. It was Pete Buttigieg, who's whatever.
You know what I wonder? Like, and you know how they do the intense vetting for your vice president?
Yeah.
What was in Buttigieg's closet that they didn't want to come out?
Well,
They found something.
Dude, did you hear what the vetting was on Sunday when they interviewed? It was a
No.
compatibility interview with Kamala.
Yeah, but I mean, they say
Like
that.
what?
They say that, but you can't ever decide if that's real or not. Like,
You know who
they're
who
gonna
led
want
the vetting?
chemistry, and they're gonna want.
Do you know
Hold on. Was it Cheadle?
Eric Holder?
Oh, get the fuck out of here!
Yeah, Eric Holder led the vetting for vice president.
Wow. But I bet you that
Another
went
Obama
fast
guy.
and furious. That went fast and furious. I bet.
Good one. Yeah, good callback.
Yeah, he's another reputable source. But I mean, we've talked about it over and over again. You're hard pressed to find anybody from the left or anybody in the uniparty right that is a decent pick for anything. I think something else is kind of funny and interesting about this. They were saying that Walz is just plain like a plain guy. And for the most part he is. But looking at his running mate, you kind of almost have to have that, right? Kamala is, she has the affair with Willie Brown or whatever his name is, right? And that's how she kind of gets her start. And then she earns the nickname from there on up. And you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to say it because I guess that's probably not good. But and then even her husband, had an affair.
Yeah, with the
And
babysitter.
yeah, I mean they're a
But to be
perfect
fair, so
match.
did Joe Biden with Joe.
That is true. But I mean that's what I'm talking about in those aspects. Now I know people are going to be like, "Hey, man, Trump and Stormy Daniels." I get it. I get it. Um,
Hmm.
but that's also I think helps you when you get a guy like Walls who kind of seems um
Yeah, until you start talking his policies.
correct. Well, he seems legit. He seems down to earth. He seems morally with it. And then you start looking at the stuff he's done and you're like, whoa, where
Yeah.
did that come from? Because the person you're telling me about is this, but the guy you're actually showing me is way the hell to the left of this.
Well, and he used to be conservative. He used to be like a moderate Democrat when he
Right.
was running in when he was in Congress, fighting for veterans' health and farmers and stuff like that. And now, like all of a sudden, it happened when he became governor. He
Well, yeah,
was
that's where the
all of a sudden just like
well,
the most progressive he could get. And this,
it,
I mean, he was recognized by Obama. That's like we talked about it. I said that's why I think he's going to get the nod. Is Obama's been praising him for a long time about how
right.
he's like quietly turned Minnesota into a progressive state.
And we know that Obama is he's leading the show in the Democrat parties.
Yeah.
He's kind of like the commander in chief of their party right now. So that was a good call. But I also think it's kind of funny. Um, like we were talking about, they say in 2017 he had $13,500 for net worth,
Yeah.
right?
He was in Congress for 10 years at that point. I doubt that.
Correct. But that's what they say, 13,500.
Yeah.
And then they say the second screenshot I showed you after the simple Google search where you had 19 million, that was in 2020 that
Hmm.
he had 19 million.
Hmm.
What happened in 2020
COVID.
and the vaccines and everything else, right?
Hmm.
The one before that was 2021 or 22, I'm sorry, that had $32 million worth
Hmm.
of his net worth. That I can't get. I can't find that anymore. So if you Google search this, and I've gone to DuckDuckGo and I've brought up things, and I'm still not seeing those numbers. So, um, depending on which Google search you believe, what over the course of the last, 7 days, um, maybe he made all that money with the vaccine, like a lot of them did, like a lot of them do, the insider trading. Uh, you never know. I do believe, and you do believe that politicians are bought and paid for by big donor groups, by super PACs, by these massive corporations that look at stuff and donate tons of money to these PACs that then give it out to their candidates, and the candidates are beholden to who's giving money to the super PACs. Um, so I don't know. That's a whole episode in itself, but it's there's the possibility that yeah he's got way more money than what is gonna be found out as a simple Google search. But I bet you money we're gonna find all these fact checks now that Google's come out and drop their search results down to 600,000. He's got $600,000 now. That's a hell of a loss of money in the course of 7 days.
Hmm. Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, he is the exact opposite of Pelosi.
Hmm.
So yeah, I Governor Walz wouldn't have been my pick, but obviously everybody else, like you said, they couldn't cut it because they're being attacked on all different levels. Hamas won, and it, which part of the Democrat Party is winning this battle with who they're picking? And right now it's the far left. So we already knew that Kamala was really far left in her primary run with all the shit she was saying.
Hmm.
Uh, man, it looks like that's going to continue if
Well,
her and Walz are together.
let's not forget that he has one of the squad members from the state, from Minneapolis, Ilhan
Right.
Omar.
Right.
So they're connected.
Yeah. And again, part of that feeding our future, she was there with part of it too.
Yep, she's
So,
pictured. Well, they're both pictured. I just saw the picture the other day of Walls. That's the first time I saw that.
mhm.
Pictured with the people that were
in the scam.
Yeah, arrested or indicted.
And both of them received campaign funds from these individuals, and then
Well,
immediately,
all of them did.
and then once they found out that there was the investigation and the indictment's going to be handed down, they got rid of money in the same amount. Oh, we took those donations and gave them to charity.
Mhm.
Yeah, kiss my ass, Walls. Kiss my ass, Omar.
It was probably the Feed Our Future charity.
He gave it right back to him.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's a nonprofit. It's fine.
right. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's where we're at, man. And I don't know. What do you think if you were a betting man? What do you think the odds are that Kamala and Walls can pull this out?
I don't, man. Honestly, I don't. I don't think it's gonna go well. Like some of the stuff that I saw on Walls in the last 24 hours, like just from the left, someone said, "Anybody remember who Tim Kaine is?" Like
Like, that's exactly what I was thinking.
That's gonna be the name Tim Walz. Like no one's gonna remember this guy after this. And the only thing I can think is that they didn't want to burn anybody else. And so they selected him because they know this isn't gonna work. Like Axelrod's out there saying, listen, these numbers aren't right. Kamala's way behind. These numbers, I mean, whatever. But so they took him, not to Rex Shapiro, not to tie him to this disaster. They have 91 days from today when we're recording. It's 91 days to the election.
Hmm.
I just, a part of me feels like that's the play. They didn't want to wreck their chances in 4 years, and they burned Kamala, so she can't do it next time.
Yeah, I mean, she can run again, but she's never
Yeah,
going to
she won't get
she'll-
in the primary though.
She won't make the primary.
No. I mean, she didn't make
Um,
the primary last time. She got out before Iowa. She was polling at less than 1%.
1%, yeah.
Tulsi crushed her.
Yeah, and Tulsi's going to be out there
I haven't
shortly.
seen anything from Tulsi since the convention, though.
She's, I think they're trying not to burn Tulsi as well.
Yeah,
You
it
know what
could
I mean?
be. It could be.
I think they're trying to leave Tulsi that I have this feeling that Trump is conservative, but he's more middle than right.
Well,
If you're looking at
he's a populist, right?
right, but he's
Every
running on the
one of his
conservative
policies,
ticket.
every one of his policies are like polling at 68% of the people support it.
Right. And I just think that they're setting up the future to have multiple, maybe 3, 4, JD Vance, Tulsi, DeSantis. They want 3 or 4 people who are going to go anti-establishment if they can get them. Um, we'll see. I don't know. But I just feel like they're trying not to burn Tulsi. She's definitely going to have a spot in his administration. She's going to be like the envoy to the UN or whatever it'll be. She'll have a role somewhere.
Oh, so I just pulled her up to see what was going on. Well,
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything from her. She apparently just took a new command. I recently took command of the 354th was BN
Battalion.
battalion in Oklahoma, a drill sergeant battalion that supports the Army's initial entry training mission. I just got off duty and I'm grateful to serve with and support excellent NCOs who have chosen this path. Huh. I didn't know she was still in.
Yeah, I didn't either. Well, I mean, I did, but I didn't know that she was in the chain of command. She was going to take over command.
Mhm.
Hottest commander on the planet
Yeah, dude.
by far.
For real.
Yeah, one thing about Tulsi, I think that I really, really love is that she says what she means and she means what she says.
Mm-hmm.
And when people on the left are trying to call her out and say like she's a Russian asset, that to me was absolutely hilarious. She's the only one who raised her right hand and went in a uniform overseas and served her country, and still does. And so that's kind of cool that she took that position. Good for her. I hope it leads to a lot of good things in the future.
Yep. So, any final thoughts on Walz?
Um,
I mean, there's other things that we could talk. I mean, we could talk about his
I don't even need to hear
he used
anything
to
else.
he used to be an A+ member for the NRA when he
Yeah, I
first
know.
started.
Yeah, and now
That's not
he wants all
yeah,
guns. Yeah.
that's no
But
longer a thing.
again, it's a political thing with him. It's a political
Yeah.
decision that he just licks his finger and goes with the political wins. Everybody can have a change of heart. You just can't have a change of heart that much. And here's the hard conversation that Walz will refuse to have. You're an A+ member of the NRA, and now you want to not have guns because of Sandy Hook or because of any of those tragic things that have taken place. I 100% agree that it's an absolute tragedy that those kids were killed. And I'll tell you, and this is going to shock you. I was in the training room of our work when that took place.
Mhm.
And that event, because it hadn't been tiny kids up to that point, but that event that took place had me questioning if I wanted people to have AR-15s.
Mhm.
That says something. But
Mhm.
here it is, point blank. It's a tragedy that took place. You know what the bigger tragedy is? The millions that would die if we gave up our guns and the government went tyrannical.
Yeah.
That Second Amendment is there to keep us from being ruled again by a ruling class. That's the only thing that stops it. Politicians and behavior, the shit we see in Washington, the lies that are spread, the simple stuff like, yeah, it was a mistake that was made by the law enforcement when I got this DUI because I was deaf until I had the surgery. I wasn't drunk. Simple misunderstanding. It's that type of behavior that leads to further down the road more corruption. If there's a little bit of corruption that can seep in and get to you, then you're open for all of it,
Mhm.
right? If you have a strong moral compass and corruption hasn't seeped in, or if you're a guy who's got FU money like Trump, you have enough money where you don't have to take the money, okay, then you're probably solid. Uh, Walls, he's a coward. That's my final thought. The man is a straight-laced coward. And I don't care that you were a high school teacher. I don't care that you were a football coach. There's plenty of football coaches that have screamed at kids for years, and as soon as somebody got in their freaking kitchen, they were a coward as well. So
Yeah.
that's my opinion of Walls. When you finally had the chance to prove yourself in a leadership position, you backed out and
Failed.
took
You
off.
failed. You failed.
You took off, and it just seems to be a pattern. Whether it
Mhm.
was Minneapolis, whether it's the National Guard, whether it's uh, the only time I think Governor Walz has not taken that position was with Londrigan, the state trooper, with Mary Moriarty.
Well, I honestly, like, we talked about it in another one of our happy hour ones, right?
Yep.
Uh, I don't believe he was ever going to do anything.
You don't think so?
He kept no. He kept saying that he was going to, and
To
he
get her
kept
to drop
the
it.
press kept asking him, like, and he's like, "Yeah, we're gonna have to talk. We're gonna have to talk about it. We're gonna have to talk about it. We're gonna have to look at that." But
Well,
he never did
he's come out
anything.
since and said, yeah, he was prepared to,
Sure,
but
but
that doesn't mean he would have,
yeah,
right?
I don't think he would have.
But again, with that one, the political winds have shifted again.
Mhm.
We're not in the same space now where we were when George Floyd died. Now it's the cops
Well, it's way
who are being
different.
murdered. It's the police officers who are being murdered. We're at
That
257 for the year. That's the most that
yeah,
have ever
yeah,
been murdered in a
yeah,
year while on duty. 257.
yeah.
There's a war on cops right now, and I think people are starting to understand it and it's starting to get out there. And it's political season. You don't want to be that guy who's against cops right now. You see Democrats now starting to come out and say, "Oh, we're law and order."
Well,
Bullshit. You're
they
defunding
have
the
to be.
cops.
There's an election coming, but
Exactly.
that case was very different. They was dragging another trooper. Like, he wasn't already
Sure.
in handcuffs. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, so
100%.
I just think that, yes, I agree with you on
This was an
on
easy one for him to take the
yes,
political shift
for
and
sure.
and
For
sail
sure.
through.
Yeah.
Yep. But I think had the political winds been stacked against him and everybody was out for blood like they were with George Floyd and I forget what was the other Kimberly, whatever she was that shot
Potter.
the kid.
Kim
Yeah,
Potter.
Kim Potter. Um, if it was like that, he would have sailed him down the river if he could have. And if it's a bad shoot, you and I would be the first to say, yeah, that's a bad
Yep.
shoot. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Kim
Yep.
Potter, bad shoot. You
It
fucked
was a
up.
bad shoot. He grabbed the wrong thing.
Poor
That's
training. poor
Yep.
training and poor muscle memory on your weapon systems for non-lethal and lethal, and you grabbed
Yep.
the wrong one and engaged. Bad shoot. There's a state trooper right now that's going to be going for manslaughter because he killed somebody with his vehicle because he's a dumbass.
Car accident.
Yep. And that should be.
Flying down the highway.
I don't even know why the hell that kid had a job with as much of the crap that he had going on in his record.
Yeah,
but
that wasn't the first time. That wasn't his first accident.
no, he's been on probation multiple times.
Yeah,
Kid should not have been a trooper at that point. He should have been pulled
No.
off the streets.
he should have been done. Mhm.
Could have rode a desk. I mean, this kid, we talk about touch of the powers. He had a touch of the powers. And you know what he said? I had heard this. See if you can back this up. But he had a ride along earlier that day and dropped his ride along off. Yeah, the day of the accident, he had a ride along. This is going to haunt this kid. He told the guy who was doing the ride along with him, he was doing 90 miles an hour up a ramp after he got canceled on a call. And he told his ride along, he knew he was going to get canceled, but he just likes to go fast.
Holy shit.
Yep. So, Bud, you're going down for that.
Yeah,
one,
you need to go down.
Yeah. And I mean, we'll be the first to say it, but Walz is it's a political decision. But it's too bad. Not my guy, not my pick. But again, I'm not shockingly, I know it shocks everyone. I am not exactly for the Democrat Party.
Yeah, you're gonna knock everybody over with a feather with that one.
Right? I just don't have the required white guilt. And I don't know. Not my party.
I love that the tampon Tim is still trending.
I love it too.
It's been all day. It was trending
Good.
number 1 all day.
Good. I love that picture. Do you like that picture?
Yeah.
That's a good picture. We'll take that one to the bank and just hold on to that picture for a while because that was good. Tampon Tim. But hey, you know what? The conservatives are weird, right, Tim?
So I'm just reading another post that it says Section 2, Minnesota Statute 2022, Section 363 Alpha .03, Subdivision 44 is amended to read Subdivision 44, Sexual Orientations. Sexual orientations means having or being perceived as having an emotional, physical, or sexual attachment to another person without regard to the sex of that person, or having or being perceived as having an orientation for such attachment. And that says it's crossed out. It says, or having or being perceived as having a self-image or identity non-traditional associated with one's biological maleness or femaleness. Sexual orientation does not include a physical or sexual attachment to children by an adult. So they have crossed that out. Walz signed this into law.
Yep.
That pedophilia is a sexual orientation.
Yes. And then they had to come back and re-clarify, which the addendum, they amended it because it blew up.
No, this is different than that. This is not the Human Rights Act.
Oh, say this again then? Say it again? Wait,
This says Tim Walz signed a bill redefining the term of sexual orientation to include pedophiles. So what they crossed out from the old law was or having or being perceived as having a self-image or identity not traditionally associated with one's biological maleness or femaleness. And it says sexual orientation does not include a physical or sexual attachment to children by an adult. They crossed that out. They deleted that part. So it then would say that pedophiles
they're defining sexual orientation. Pedophilia is a sexual
orientation.
Yep. That's all I needed to hear. Fuck you, Tim Walz. Him and Kamala are perfect for each other, and Biden. You got Biden's shiny hair legs. You got Kamala's. Yeah, I'm not even going to touch that. And then you got Walz with his far left policies with pedophilia. I don't see what could be a problem. for the left. They love it. They're going to absolutely love it. I mean, maybe that's the litmus test we have to put out there for the left. Hey, real quick, um, just throwing this out there. How do you feel about kids being touched by adults? Do you feel like maybe if you're, what was that name they had? MAP, minor attracted person, right? Remember they tried to normalize that by giving them an acronym. Oh, they're just people too. They're not bad. They just are attracted to children. Yes, I understand they're attracted to children. And if they're attracted to my children, I would like to castrate them. Sorry, but that's just the way it is. Uh, but that's got to be the litmus test. Be like, hey, what do you think about that guy over there who likes little kids? You into that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
This is fucked.
it is fucked. I mean, how far the Democrat Party has slipped from normalcy. And if you're a Democrat at this point and this is what you're into, like I understand party politics. I understand, the partisan bullshit. I understand you don't like Trump. But do you really hate Trump more than you are willing to be okay with pedophilia? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You hate Trump so much that it's okay for you to, let kid diddling happen? Because if that's the case, at some point you're going to be met at the end of a barrel. That's just, I don't know how you can do anything else. Kids should be off fucking limits. That's where we got to keep it. It has to stay that way. It has to. It absolutely has to stay that way. And if you're a Democrat and you're like, oh, I hate Donald Trump. Okay, you don't have to like him. His policies weren't terrible. They had your life being better. Well, he's arrogant. He's brash. He's mean. He's a bully. He doesn't believe in this. He doesn't believe in that. Yeah, he also doesn't believe in people touching little children.
Mm-hmm.
Just throwing that out there. So I don't know. That's really messed up, man. That's all I got to say about that.
So it was part of the Take Pride Act, which was an act included in the Judiciary and Public Safety Bill.
Go figure.
As such, Tim
take
Walz
pride.
signed a bill into law that included an amendment that removed the clause that excluded pedophiles from 2022 C52 Art 19 S44.
He is going to get torched for that.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, you know what? I mean, every stage of the way. I mean, like it's par for this Democrat course.
Yeah.
The shifting political winds. He's just gonna go with. I mean, do I think Tim Walz is a pedophile? No, absolutely not. I don't think he's a pedophile. Do I think if he's taking pressure from the left to say pedophiles aren't bad people, that's exactly what he's gonna do. He's a coward.
Mm-hmm.
He's gonna kowtow to whatever's gonna get him more power. That's what he's gonna do. And true leadership stands up and says hard things to people that they don't want to hear, even when it's harder to not hear it. You know what I mean? Even when it's harder to say it. You know what I mean? That's what true leadership is. They stand their ground. I have not seen that ever from Walz.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously Kamala is the complete opposite of a true leader. So
yeah,
there's that.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a hell of a ride.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be a crazy 90 days or 91 days.
Bro, can you imagine? Last time Trump got elected, they were screaming in the streets with pussy hats, having full-blown adult temper tantrums in the street, crying and screaming at the sky. They might take some sort of freaking explosive drug to make their heads blow up this time.
I sent you that thing from Raskin, didn't I?
I don't think so. Which one?
Jamie Raskin, the representative, is literally on video saying that him and fellow Democrats are going to use Amendment 14, Section 3, and push that Trump not be, if he wins, he will not, because of the Insurrection Act, they will not validate the electors.
Oh, so they're going to do exactly what Trump said he was wanting done.
Correct.
Now it's
But it's the insurrection. They're saying the insurrection thing, which he's not been charged with.
Well, they'll do the same thing.
Yeah.
And he's not
So-
been charged. I mean, they had if you don't think that the bipartisan group that was Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, if you don't think they would have found whatever evidence there was out there to call it an insurrection and to actually have him charged, if you don't think that they did everything they could to figure it out, there's nothing there for them to charge him on. That's why they can't. But it's the optics. So yeah, I mean, they can say all the shit they're going to want to say. At the end of the day, they're going to come out and be like, we're going to do the exact opposite of what Trump did. We're going to do a peaceful transition of power because that's what democracy is. Yeah, okay. Whatever. Get the fuck out. It's time. Let's have our country back. Let's start rebuilding our military. Let's start figuring shit out. Hopefully we pay down some of this deficit, because if I have you pull up the debt clock now, we're probably, 36 trillion in the hole at this point. So I mean, I don't care what he says.
Here you go. You ready for it?
Yeah.
What can be put into the Constitution can slip away from you very quickly. And the greatest example going on right now before our very eyes is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which they're just disappearing with a magic wand, as if it doesn't exist, even though it could not be clearer what it's stating. And so, they want to kick it to Congress. So it's going to be up to us on January 6, 2025, to tell the rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified. And then we need bodyguards for everybody in Civil War conditions, all because the 9 justices, not all of them, but these justices who have not many cases to look at every year, not that much work to do, a huge staff, great protection, simply do not want to do their job and interpret what the great 14th Amendment means. And I'm glad that Sherilyn's creating her new center so we can bring that.
Yeah.
Literally saying there's going to be a civil war, which there will be.
There will be if they try to.
They all need bodyguards.
Oh, they're going to need more than bodyguards.
Yeah, they're going to need a military unit.
And they're going to need more than that. So the U.S. military is not going to fire on American civilians. They just won't.
Yeah.
You might have your wokesters that have made their way into the military. But here's what I see. Trump had a Secret Service DEI agent who probably doesn't agree with a whole lot of what Trump says. She wasn't great at her job, but guess what? She still did it.
Mm-hmm.
She still jumped on him and got to him and covered him down and did her job. That tells me something. Now, the military is a lot like that. Now, these kids, most of them now that are in the military, they haven't deployed. They don't have that same level of brotherhood or sisterhood that everybody else has shared, that you form under intense pressure and situations. But they're also still American kids. They're not going to shoot people that look just like them in the streets for having an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
There might be some, but a lot of others are going to put down their weapons and say, yeah, I'm not following that order. And they have a duty to not follow that order. And this thing's going to look real different. Let's talk Civil War quick. If this does happen where they step in and say, yeah, we're not going to certify Trump, even though the vote went to him, because they say that he committed an insurrection without evidence, without any charges, he's never been charged for it. If they do that, the federal military is going to cease to exist, because the governors of those states are going to take over that federal military. So you're going to have Texas and Florida and North Carolina, and you're going to have Washington State. You're going to have Colorado. You're going to have places where there's New York State. You're going to have places where there's going to be federal bases taken over by those governors. And it's probably going to be somewhere around a 30-20 split. Right? So that Civil War isn't going to be what people think it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Texas is going to put a whole lot of hurting on people if you think you're going to enter into a civil war with governors. Florida, I don't know what he's tracking. West Virginia is pretty conservative outside of Washington. So Virginia Beach, I don't know if people know this or not, but there's a lot of Navy SEALs that are there. Florida has a lot of aircraft that are there.
Mhm.
Texas, a ton of people.
Oklahoma, North Dakota.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be what this guy thinks it is.
Mm-mm.
So again, if it turns into governors taking control of their states and the militaries within their states, you better be damn careful if you're a liberal and you want a civil war. Or you're going to go the way of Muammar Gaddafi. You're going to get drug out of your freaking little perch and you're going to get drugged through the streets and nobody wants that. I don't want that for you. I don't want that for anybody. Um, but you're not gonna like the outcome. Stop with the freaking political rhetoric. It's bullshit. Just stop. Turn down the temperature. Take it on the chin. Your policies on the left fucking suck. You put a potato in the Oval Office that you knew was a potato the whole goddamn time, and you still let him stay there. You watched his cognitive decline. You lied about it. Your media lackeys all covered for him. Kamala Harris is a box of rocks. I won't even finish it, but that's what you have. Take it on the chin. You have nobody in your political party that has any good ideas because everything you've done for the last 4 years is fucking trash. I'm sorry, Obama can't run for a third term. Kiss my ass. We need to stop. No Civil War talk with that.
Yeah. No, I just I thought I sent that to you, but yeah. Eh, you have to get a significant number of Democrats to go with you, and they're just not going to get that.
No, but I think what they're going to do is saber rattle until they get their far fringe left to actually start civil unrest in that regard of civil
Sure,
war.
but it just won't matter. You don't have enough. They don't
I
have
agree.
with cinema and um mansion voting, they don't have the like that counts as their 50. Like it's a tie. That counts as their 50. They're not going to have those two for sure.
Well, I just don't think that will matter. What I think they're trying to do is I think they're going to try to rally their base and turn them violent. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
once it gets to the streets, the civil war that they're talking about that'll take place is going to be so difficult to even decide what a front line is because if it's just left against right, I mean it's neighbor versus neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think your governors are going to come into play and gain control and the upper hand. And really what it's weird to say this, but what you're going to see is an exodus. You're going to see conservatives in a conservative state stay and liberals get pushed out. And then a state like California is going to be like, come one, come all, or New York, come
Mhm.
one, come all, or Colorado, hey, come on in, we'll take you. And then the conservative states where, because I mean, if you look at any electoral map, it's always the whole state is red except for the metropolitan areas.
Right. Right.
And then that'll be blue. So in those metropolitan areas, they're going to get pushed out and there's going to be an exodus. And the thing that they don't understand, California and all these people and all these, you think the smartest people in the world should be your politicians or the smartest people you have in society. What they don't understand is the rest of those states that don't live in those metropolitan areas, that's your distribution centers. That's your food. That's your farmers. That's your, hardworking people that work on your infrastructure. They won't have it. And so they're screwed. They're absolutely screwed. The only way they can do this is with a political game, but they're going to try. They're going to try. And they don't even care what unrest they cause and honestly, what loss of life will occur because of that. Because ultimately, best case scenario for a Democrat, if Trump wins and they pull this card and it does go to a civil war, they'll just bring in UN peacekeepers and then we'll be, forced to disarm. And that is a win, a huge win for the Democrats. Mark my words, the first blue helmet, you can ask any diehard patriot, diehard conservative, what are you going to do to that first blue helmet that lands on U.S. soil? And they will tell you, I'm going to pop the top on that thing and turn it red. So that's kind of what their ultimate goal is it's a win for them if they can make it go that far, because then we're screwed. We're absolutely screwed.
Mhm.
So hopefully it doesn't make it that far. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But I mean, that's seems to be their game plan.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, it's disgusting. All right, man. Well, I think we should probably wrap this one up. Governor
Mhm.
Walz is a coward. That's my take. What's your take?
I don't think I think he's just what they want him to be.
Yep.
And just like Kamala, she
Not
just
not a leader for sure.
For sure, he's not a leader.
Yep. And it's gonna get crazy. You got to send me that clip. I want to.
The
see
Raskin one.
Yeah, I want to see that whole Raskin clip.
Well, that was it. I don't have the full.
Okay, I'll find it.
It was from 22 hours ago. It just says Raskin Congress must disqualify Trump if he wins.
Fuck them.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'll look and find it.
Yeah.
All right, well,
But-
I think we have enough for this episode, eh?
Yeah. I think so.
All right, well, everybody, thanks again for tagging along, and thanks for listening in. We hope to catch you on the next one, and we're still we got a lot of plans in place, and maybe doing some other things here shortly with interviews and things like that. We might have one nailed down for sure, and
Yep.
another one coming soon. So stick with us, and again, thanks for the support. Go ahead, Pat, hit him.
Follow us on our social media pages: X, Truth, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Our website's bluecollartakes.com. So spread the word, put it out there.
Yeah, let's make this go somewhere so we can start being part of the solution instead of being part of the problem.
Sounds good.
All right, buddy. Well, thanks everyone for joining in, and take care.
Yep. See ya.